The people and legislators of Iowa need to understand that the Iowa Public Employees Retirement System and similar public pension systems throughout America are holding a number of malevolent Russian and Chinese enterprises in their portfolios for state employees. This has come about because the interest is in return on investment. And the position that Russia and China enjoy in the emerging markets, in the case of China, the lead player in the emerging markets. But that's no excuse for choosing to have in your portfolios serious, egregious human rights abusers and country and activities that have contravened the vital security interests of the United States. I mean, we have, for example, in the IPERS, Iowa Public Employees Retirement System, 8 Russian-sanctioned companies, sanctioned by the United States, that you're not allowed to do business with them by law, but you're able to invest in them, you're able to fund them, you're able to give them all the prestige of being in the world's most voluminous and deepest markets. Something they take to the bank every day around the world is the Good Housekeeping seal of approval. Far from sanctions, these are rewards. In the case of China, it's a much bigger problem by orders of magnitude. There might be 25 Russian companies in the U.S. capital markets. Compare that to probably over 1,000 in the case of China. There are reports estimates that as much as $3 trillion of Americans' savings and investment funds have been extracted from the U.S. markets in the form of equity and debt offerings, stocks and bonds, that they have put in our marketplace and move that money into China for their seemingly unlimited checking account to move around the world, compromising countries, capturing nations, capturing regions and continents, like if you take Africa. In other words, a malevolent use of those funds. The reason that they're a near-peer competitor with the United States militarily, or striving to do so, and are trying to do the same in the technology field, is because we're picking up that tab. I mean, this is the sad truth of the matter. The U.S. capital markets, it's important to remember, have over 60% of the world's liquidity. All of the capital markets of the world combined are not the size of ours. So it's not as though China has someplace else to go. When the 21st century rolled around, we had all the money. It's one of the great last monopolies of the United States, in the sense that we have this absolute dominance in this financial domain on this planet. China knows this. They're in desperate need of dollar liquidity. They are not tapping that $3 trillion in reserves. They need that there to ward off actual diligence being performed by the people that want to do business with them. So they don't touch that. And I can tell you that they don't have all kinds of walking around money that seems to be limitless when you look at their activities. So state public pension systems are a wonderful boon to the Chinese economy, to its military, to its intelligence services, and to their effort to undermine our vital interests, to put them in a position where they could actually defeat the United States and put at risk, if not destroy, all that we hold dear. The stakes couldn't be higher. I mean, we're talking about, again, trillions of dollars, not hundreds of billions, or certainly not tens of billions. So when we look at each of the public pension funds, and I don't mean to single out Iowa as having been particularly egregious or malfeasant, this is true of your 49 other state counterparts, so you have lots of company, but the point is that you need to look at this because there's been no screening mechanism set up in your state or the other states to look at the material risks to share value and corporate reputation to these Chinese and Russian enterprises that are associated with human rights and national security abuses of this kind. That's what puts American investors at risk, is material risk. This isn't just an ideological conversation I'm having. It's a market-oriented, sensible, risk-related conversation. And that is something that any fiduciary should care about. This is not politicizing your pension system. This is not contracting your investable universe. This isn't jeopardizing the free flow of capital around the world. All of the arguments that Wall Street wants you to believe. That's just not the way this is. This is about risk. And more importantly, it's also about callousness. I mean, for example, Iowa PERS holds hike vision technologies. Now, what do they do for a living? Well, one of the things they do is if you look at the concentration camps in Xinjiang that are holding over 1 million Uyghurs, you're going to find at the top of these walls, along with barbed wire, every few meters are hike vision surveillance cameras. If you talk about facial recognition technology at train stations in Tibet, rounding Tibetans up, you'll find the company as well. Is this something that the people of Iowa had in mind with their retirement dollars to support concentration camps? Another of your companies is AV China. It's short for AVIC, is the short form name. China Aviation and Technology, something like that. But nevertheless, the point is, what do they do for a living? Well, they make the DF-41 ICBM that has half an hour flying time to American cities and American families. You have fighter aircraft. Iowa PERS also holds China shipbuilding. They make nuclear ballistic missile submarines. They make nuclear aircraft carriers for a living. Now, where do we think that these kinds of advanced weapon systems are going to be directed? They're directed at us. So this is more than just a purely financial argument, but the whole thing can be justified, I think, in market practices and what should be SEC regulations that are enforced on ensuring the disclosure of these material risks at minimum to the people of Iowa and, for that matter, to the people of the United States. I mean, how many people do we have on the markets today in our country? 150, 180 million Americans, something of this kind? Do you know, China is racing to extract or to make us more dependent on their stocks and bonds. They're flooding, if you will, our market with dollar-denominated bonds as well as new equity offerings. Again, at the end of the day, this is fundraising. If they were to attract, as they want to, $2 to $3 trillion more in the next, say, 24, 36 months, you could have a day where Americans wake up, all 150, 180 million of us, and find that 17%, 22%, 25% of our retirement portfolios, of our investment portfolios, are all in Chinese securities. A number of them bad actors. Now just imagine that day when the China lobby, as it's famously called, has scores of millions of Americans joining in because of their vested financial interest in opposing future sanctions or penalties against China, independent of the severity of the offense. Why? Because they're worried about the damage to the value of their investment portfolios. Do we really think that China's not alert to this stealthy effort to make us beholden to them? Do we really believe that they won't use that kind of leverage if they have it? I mean, you see the way they saber rattle about withdrawing in one fell swoop their $1.1 trillion in treasury bills, for example. Of course, it wouldn't have that draconian effect as they like us to believe, but nevertheless, they are all about using whatever leverage they have to ensure that they maintain unfettered access to dollar liquidity and the vast capital markets that we have in our country that are, again, second to none, and where they have nowhere else to go. So I would think that during this period when presidential candidates are rolling through the states, they should be asked, what's their position on the fact that we have hundreds, if not, over 1,000 Chinese companies, some of them, again, bad actors by any measures, human rights abusers, national security abusers. What are we doing about the fact that we've never screened them out, even though they represent an asymmetric material risk to share value and corporate reputation? These companies in China don't disclose their financials. They're regarded as state secrets. How do you perform diligence on them? They don't adhere to PCAOB audits, which all of our American corporate counterparts have to be part of or subject to if they're going to participate in the U.S. capital markets. What about the fact that China's not compliant with Dodd-Frank and Sarbanes-Oxley, U.S. securities laws? Do you think that our companies can get away with that? Think again. No way. So China's receiving preferential treatment. Presidential candidates should be asked why. This conversation is more important than the trade portfolio. I know trade's getting all the attention, but it's the shiny object that China wants us concentrating on, because they can have that conversation and weather tariffs all day long, all year long, as they've proved. They don't like the technology restrictions, as we're waking up to the fact that they're stealing us blind on the technology front, and they're using it right into their advanced weapon systems and other malevolent purposes. So they don't like that. But the one issue that they're most concerned about, I would argue that the one that they can least afford to ever see the light of day is the money. And it was the same case with the Soviet Union. I mean, why do we really think the Soviet Union went down? They were bankrupted in large part by the Reagan administration. And that story hasn't been fully told, but believe me, the Chinese have a voracious appetite for dollars. Their currency is not convertible. So I would only say that we have to be vigilant and disciplined in the way we do business with China, just as we are on the trade front. At least it has the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States that's trying to screen and monitor what kind of investments they can have that don't compromise our security interests. Well, where's that screening mechanism on the cap markets? Non-existent. Where's the intelligence community looking at who's coming into our markets and profiling them to find out who are they really? What kind of abuses have they been involved in? What about their subsidiaries? AVIC, that I was mentioning to you earlier, has been sanctioned by the United States on 5 previous occasions for reasons of proliferation of weapon systems. ZTE is the same. China Unicom is owned by Iowa PERS, and they're responsible for telecommunications and air defense communications in the South China Sea. They're the only internet provider for North Korea. Is that a company that Iowans feel comfortable holding in their portfolios? So there's a lot of data available here. I mean, there's stocks, there's bonds, there's exchange-traded funds. There are ones that you hold actively in the sense that you choose those individual stocks, and there are ones that appear in index funds. So we have this information. We're happy to share it with you and plan to. But the people of Iowa need to go to their state legislators, and the state legislators themselves need to become activists on this and maybe put Iowa in a leading position of caring about this issue. I mean, we have to care about, where our money is going and how it's being used. I mean, this is just rudimentary. And yet, it's never seen the light of day. You've never heard a conversation about it, I dare say. You've never seen a state legislature debate. You've never seen it on TV. You've never seen it in one interagency meeting in Washington. You've never seen it in one congressional hearing. And before March of this year, when we started to go public with our research findings, you didn't find it in any article or any media outlet. So again, we're in new territory here, but this is the motherlode. This is the most coveted China dream, to quote President Xi, that they have, is to load us up with their stocks and bonds so that, in effect, we're beholden to them. And at the same time, they get the kind of vast funding that they need to maintain this seemingly invincible juggernaut that's appeared on the horizon to challenge us in every sphere and to put at risk our primacy in the world and to defeat our way of life. Let's face it. I mean, this is a totalitarian or authoritarian, to be sure, police state, and it's not pretty. And even on those that don't care about national security should darn right care about human freedom. What about the surveillance state that's being funded here? What about those concentration camps? So this is a bipartisan issue. This is an American issue. And I urge you, all of you, to take it seriously, and those journalists to write about this, and let's get these statistics and these facts out there, because they're not my opinion. They're empirical. That's the beauty of finance. You can write them down, and there they are. And then you can just choose what you're going to do. And I certainly hope that the audiences that are going to view this today will take this seriously and understand that we're in this together and we need to be vigilant. Thank you.